What's up, guys? We are back with the annual reading list and reviews. Did a pretty good mix of stuff this year. Obviously, I was working on my own fiction, short stories, and tried to do a little bit of research both on form and example, really. So I messed around with a handful of short story authors and craft focused stuff throughout the year, as well as a good mix of nonfiction material and other longer fiction material. Let's get into it. Action Story by Shawn is about how to construct stories and characters that embrace conflict to advance the narrative. It wasn't a long listen, but does well to break down subgenres and plot structure, enumerating them to enable writers to follow the process. It builds on the aspects addressed in the Story Grid universe, which broadly approaches creative fiction writing with a bird's eye view in an introductory way, I felt. A big help to me, honestly. Next up was The Skull by Philip K. Dick, a short story about a community in the future trying to deal with the consequences of religious fanaticism. PKD weaves an aspect of retrocausality alongside the concept of inevitability. It's an earlier work, but still has his tone found later on, I felt. I did a pretty decent collection of his material throughout the year, so you'll see kind of what I went through in terms of his short story collection. The Gun by Philip K. Dick is quite a short one about a crewed spacecraft that visits an uncharted world. Their mission is interrupted and they must work together in crisis. What happens when technology works against us? The next book that I went into was a physical read, AI for Brands, Embracing the Future by Tery Spataro, our own Tery. We know her. She sent me a paperback copy of the book, which is a great introduction to the theory and thinking, in my opinion. There are a couple of notes that I have here. The lists on pages 166, 167 could become their own chapters or segments, something to kind of spin off or build out this book further if her and her co-authors so choose. I think they could categorize the lists by models versus platforms. Plus, there are a lot of new things out. Obviously, we're going to keep seeing innovations for this technology over the next couple of years, and, it's probably fair to update the information as new stuff comes along, or other things kind of fade away. Last, the workflows could be more illustrative in regards to showing how to get optimal results so people can be hands-on with the tools. Worth checking out if you haven't explored artificial intelligence for content development or marketing yet. Also had her on the podcast to talk at length about her career and putting together this book with the co-authors. Next, I did an audiobook rendition of God Emperor of Dune by Frank Herbert. It jumps forward in time thousands of years from its previous installment in the series, but relates the arc of the Atreides family through the life of Leto II. The first half is insightful about faith and society before making the story personal, focusing on the introduced characters. Then I went back to Beyond the Door by Philip K. Dick, a short story about how madness infects us. I feel like he put this whole piece together after making a mental connection between the words cuckoo and cuckold. Just a side note there. Next one, also from Philip K. Dick's short story collections, Beyond Lies the Wub. They say pigs are amongst the most intelligent of domesticated animals, that their eyes are human, maybe a human soul, and yet some hunger for the taste of long pig. Who knows what we'll learn about ourselves out in the stars. The next book I completed this year is The Intention Experiment by Lynne McTaggart, which is about manifesting our thoughts into reality with directed focus. It incorporates a comprehensive look back at academic research on the topic. Hat tip to Black AI's Artist Incubator for the recommendation. The Eyes Have It by Philip K. Dick is a short story about extraterrestrials and paranoia. Maybe the narrator is just coming apart at the seams. At any rate, it's a brief exploration that doesn't burden the reader with a lot of backstory, world building, or long narrative arcs. I followed that up with The Crystal Crypt by Philip K. Dick, a short story about interplanetary conflict and how economics affect the society to consider how technology might even the score through ransom. I like how he writes futuristic stories involving space travel with characters named Bob and Jan. Dreamer of Dune is the biography of Frank Herbert written by his son, Brian Herbert. It does all the classic things you'd expect from a piece like this, but brings in additional insights that are often autobiographical since their lives together allowed the author unparalleled access. But have you read the book? By Kristen Lopez. Evaluates 52 books that have been translated to the big screen. Very insightful assessment of variations in character and story as these components are converted between the mediums. She covers a slew of books and films you probably love. It's not incredibly long. I think the audiobook is under 5 hours. It's all hits. There may be 10, 12 combinations that I had neither read the book nor seen the movie. The Hanging Stranger by Philip K. Dick is a body snatcher story of sorts. One man finds himself emerged into a world invaded by an alien, insect-like intelligence and must find a way to escape. Fairly short as well. I'm trying not to give away too much of the stories for these shorts because, I think if you describe too much as happening there, then it kind of undermines your own desire to go read it for yourself or listen to it, which was my case here. Piper in the Woods by Philip K. Dick is an off-world short about psychosis, or delusion, that involves a military outpost that weaves in aspects of nature in opposition to imperialism. He liked to mix notions of mid-20th century empire with the prevailing aspects of the Cold War. A creature of his times, perhaps. Aren't we all? Next up, The Defenders by Philip K. Dick is a story in which the Cold War went hot for a time, and humanity retreated underground, relying on thinking machines to support their way of life below surface. Sort of like The Matrix in a way, except America and the Soviets still hold a grudge. Here's a classic. Did it as an audiobook. The Monkey's Paw by W. W. Jacobs is a classic tale warning about being careful what you wish for. Highly recommend this for fans of Edgar Allan Poe. Even though it's from the early 20th century, it has similar tonality in terms of the language pairing the scenes. The Screwtape Letters. The Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis is a collection of letters from the elder demon Screwtape to his nephew, Wormwood, that deals with morality and process of tempting man from faith. This version was expertly read and performed by Joss Ackland, who most might know from work in film. The Art of Thinking Clearly by Rolf Dubelli is a collection of heuristics to evaluate decisions. It has nearly 100 directives which break down how to put opportunity into perspective in practical and functional ways. Hat tip Louis Pecan for the recommendation. This book functions like a Cliff Notes for Taleb and Kahneman's work, I would say. He references both of their academic and literary output heavily throughout. Escalante's Dream by David Roberts is about two Spanish Franciscan missionaries making a trail across the southwest of North America. Dominguez and Escalante set out in 1776 while the United States was in its infancy to the east to explore territory in New Mexico, Colorado, and Utah, as well as Arizona. Communing with the native population to find a route in uncharted country, the duo led a team through unforgiving lands decades before Lewis and Clark made their way to the West Coast. I then did 3 audiobook productions of Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. For me, the surrealist, absurdist transformations of Gregor has a direct line of influence on Naked Lunch, though I haven't seen that explored much in analysis. Just something I noticed. I do think there is a micro-macro thread to pull on between the prioritization of men and women in modernity that is expressed through the narrative of Gregor and his sister, Greta. However, I think it is also worth looking at the short mention of the woman he neglected to court. In regard to the mention of her occupation and the picture that Gregor keeps in his room, protectively idealizing. This feels like it could be easily passed over in the broader story about his relationship with his family and his dedication to work. I want to give a bit of assessment to each audiobook production as well because there are some strong differences between them. The first one I listened to was Benedict Cumberbatch's reading, While it is certainly the most dynamic vocal performance, the audio experience suffers. It does have some musical accompaniment that is like a small symphonic or jazz ensemble tuning, warming up maybe. Haphazard atonal music for atmosphere to transition Cumberbatch's vocal varieties as he works through the text. His is the shortest runtime at around an hour and a half. The Ralph Cossum reading is the most in the pocket, in my opinion. Reliable and cozy. Also, the production quality is excellent. You can cleanly and clearly hear every word of his work, which in Cumberbatch's version, because of the low mastering volume and vocal flourishes, is difficult at times. The Martin Jarvis version was the last I listened to and is probably my second favorite because of his performance. He has a very classic mid-20th century English cadence. Though the production sounds dated, it does use traditional symphonic flourishes to move the listener between the segments. A Mind for Numbers by Barbara Oakley is inappropriately subtitled for the numbers, math, science claim. It's just for SEO. It doesn't have any sauce for those topics, but it does have good suggestions for learning in chunks and work planning to avoid procrastination. Hat tip Louis Pecan. Sheepskin, Volume 1, by our own Dr. John T. Parse, is equal parts Orwell's Animal Farm, 1984, Pink Floyd's Animals, and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Really perfect for teenagers finding their place in the world. Would make for a great audiobook, just saying. Also, the cover art is excellent. Had Dr. Parse on the podcast as well. We Are Electric by Sally 80 is about bioelectric science spanning from the late 18th century to current research. The audiobook was performed by the author, which is nice because of her familiarity with the popular science text. She settles into her voice after a few chapters with an intimate read. Automaton by T.R. Hudson is a near-future story of dystopian America after a civil war splits the country. It centers on a refugee caravan heading west with a former soldier on missions, both personal and secret. It is screaming for a sequel. Also had Hudson on the podcast as well. Great to be able to get in contact with the authors you know and like, and to be able to support them that way. On Writing by Stephen King is part autobiography, career memoir, and writing instruction. Worth it for how he slogged it out in the minor leagues before having a hit with Carrie. The audiobook is also performed by the author, which is always nice, and serves the personal anecdotes well. Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut is considered a landmark piece of literature from the 20th century. It is a mix of war story, philosophical, and sci-fi. It has a little bit of something for a lot of different readers, but felt dated today. Side note, The Read, performed by Ethan Hawke, while intimate borders on understated, often issued in whispers and undertones. I think that was a major factor in my perception of the impact. This version also has a short interview with the author that focuses on the war and little else, unfortunately. The Silmarillion by J.R.R. Tolkien. Expertly read by Andy Serkis helps to give the text life where it is repetitive or likely incomplete by the author. What is presented in the book serves as a sort of Old Testament to the beings that provide shape and depth to Middle-earth of Lord of the Rings. The last book I finished in 2024 is a reread, a re-listen of Against the Day by Thomas Pynchon. Dick Hill was excellent with the accented voice work and the incredibly long passages. I think that the audio version really helps to drive home the narrative of the Travers family as it's spread across the world. The global events and personalities take a backseat because of the care he attends their relationship with reliable vocalization. While the famous names and places still web together the tale over the decades, they take a lower priority on the second time around, for me. The audiobook runs nearly 54 hours to convert the lengthy novel, but you get to settle in with the main characters in a different way than print. I also have a video on YouTube about my original thoughts when I physically read the book a few years back, if you're interested. So that's everything that I completed throughout the year. Thanks for watching. If you have recommendations, always looking for material to read and enjoy. If you would like to go back into the previous years and see the things that I was reading since, I think, 2018 or 2019, that's all available on YouTube and my podcast as well.